On November 10th, 2010, Rusty Sneiderman was going through his usual morning routine getting his son ready for school. Rusty, his wife Andrea, and their 2 children lived in a nice neighborhood in Dunwoody where they always felt safe and secure. However, that morning took a turn when Rusty caught a whiff of gas while loading his son into the car seat. He stepped away for a moment to check the gas meter on the side of the house, and that's when he spotted a man lying face down in their yard. Panicked, Rusty rushed back to the car, jumped into the driver's seat, and quickly backed out of the driveway to protect his son from any potential danger. Although the man managed to escape, Rusty had no idea that this wouldn't be their last encounter. Little did he know, this man lurking in their yard was far from a stranger and was much closer to their family than he could have ever imagined. This story is one that blurs the lines between love, betrayal, scandal, and insanity, and it's not one that you're going to want to miss. To make sense of everything that took place, we need to go behind the headlines. From the outside looking in, Russell Sneiderman, who went by Rusty, and his wife Andrea seemed to have it all. Many stories about husband and wife start off this way, but it's true that everyone who knew the Sneidermans thought their life was close to perfect. Rusty was born on June 18, 1974 to parents Donald and Marilyn in Cleveland, Ohio, and grew up alongside his brother Steve. The Sneidermans were followers of the Jewish faith and very involved in their Jewish heritage and traditions. Rusty was always popular in high school, extremely intelligent, and participated in as many extracurricular activities as possible. After high school, he began attending college at Indiana University and was very involved in the Hillel International Jewish Student Center, where other students of the same faith could come together. That's where he met another Jewish student named Andrea Greenberg. Andrea was born in May of 1976 in Sylvania, Ohio, to parents Herb and Bonnie Greenberg. She grew up alongside her brother Todd, and like Rusty's family, the Greenbergs were very involved in the Jewish community. In high school, Andrea excelled in math and science, which led her to studying computer information sciences and technology at Indiana University. When Rusty and Andrea met at the Jewish Student Center on campus, the two really hit it off and decided to go on a date. They quickly fell in love, but they had to move things a little slow so that they could finish getting their respective degrees. Rusty graduated from Indiana University in 1996 and then began working at an accounting firm back in Ohio while he waited for Andrea to graduate 2 years later. From there, Andrea and Rusty both got jobs at the same company located in Chicago, with Rusty working in finance and Andrea in the tech department. After a few years, Rusty decided that he wanted to continue his education, and he got accepted into Harvard Business School, where Andrea was also able to land a job in information technology for the university. During this time, Rusty and Andrea got engaged, and he soon graduated from Harvard with an MBA in business. The couple got married on December 30th, 2000 in a beautiful synagogue in Florida. From there, Rusty worked a few years in wealth management and insurance in Boston, while Andrea continued her job at the university. When they decided that it was time to grow their family, Rusty and Andrea decided that it would be best to look for jobs in a less expensive city. That's the primary reason Rusty accepted a job offer in Atlanta to work in business development for a software company called Sable Systems. Andrea was able to keep her job with Harvard because the work for the tech department could be done remotely. They moved into an affluent neighborhood in Smyrna and quickly became friends with other young couples and neighbors. Andrea only had to travel back to Boston once a month for meetings, and later transitioned into independent contracting for the business school's publishing unit. Rusty and Andrea welcomed their first child, a daughter named Sophia, in August of 2005. They decided to relocate to an area with a better school district and moved to Dunwoody, where Rusty started another job at JP Morgan doing wealth management. With both of their incomes, Rusty and Andrea were able to purchase a home for just under $1 million on a quiet cul-de-sac called Magnet Court. They became heavily involved in the Atlanta Jewish community, attending a local synagogue and participating in activities at the Marcus Jewish Community Center. In October of 2007, the family welcomed a little boy named Ian, and Andrea stayed home to care for the children while she continued to work remotely. Both of their successful careers even earned them enough money to be able to purchase a second home on Lake Oconee. Andrea's parents ended up relocating to the Atlanta area as well so they could be closer to their grandchildren, and the family spent the weekends boating and water skiing on the lake. As young professionals, it really did seem like Andrea and Rusty had it all. Unfortunately, things changed when the country went into a recession, and they both ended up losing their jobs. However, unlike most people who were affected by the recession, Andrea and Rusty had always been savers and still had over $1 million in savings and their retirement funds to fall back on. This made it so they were able to explore different business ventures until the right one came along. Rusty had several ideas for potential businesses he might want to start himself, but in the meantime decided to accept a salaried position at the Duluth-based Discovery Point Child Development Center. Even though he was working as the chief financial officer for the center, he and Andrea's children did not attend Discovery Point. Instead, their son Ian continued going to a prestigious preschool called Dunwoody Prep, and Sophia a local public kindergarten. While this job seemed like a good fit for Rusty, he and the owner unfortunately didn't get along. Rusty had a lot of ideas about the future of the company that the owner didn't like, and their personalities just seemed to clash. From the beginning, he knew his days were numbered. so Andrea started looking for employment opportunities during the meantime. While attending a local book club, Andrea was introduced to a woman named Andrea Neuman, whose husband was a high-level manager for the company GE Energy. Andrea spoke to Ariella about her experience in the field of computer technology, and she encouraged Andrea to send her husband her resume for a potential job opportunity. In March of 2010, Andrea met with Ariella's husband named Hemy Neuman, who then hired her as a quality systems manager in the product creation department at GE. With Andrea now locked in a new career, she encouraged Rusty to quit Discovery Point. There are conflicting reports on whether Rusty actually quit or was fired, but he seized the opportunity to be at home with his children, and then started to develop his own business plans. He and a friend came up with an idea called Star Voicemail, which was an app that could make users' voicemail sound like it was coming from a celebrity. For example,
Josh or John can't come to the phone right now, so leave a message. Only if it's important, though.
That might sound kind of cheesy nowadays, but back in the mid-2000s, everyone was downloading ringtones, ringback tones, and all sorts of gimmicky things for their phone. Andrea helped with the technological aspect of the app, helping create the company's website, and the startup actually had a lot of prospective investors, including Justin Bieber's manager. Starting a business and having it take off can be really exciting, but Andrea has also said that it was pretty stressful. Rusty was taking on most of the child daycare responsibilities while they were out of school, and with Andrea's new job, she had to take trips for work a few times a month. To help with this, they hired a part-time nanny so that Rusty could have more time to focus on the company. Overall, this really helped with the Sneidermans' work and family life balance, and even though things were hectic, they seemed happy with all of the changes made in their lives. I mentioned before that the Sneidermans really never had any reason to feel unsafe in their home, but all of that started to change in the fall of 2010. On October 20th, Rusty and Andrea were laying down in the upstairs bedroom when they suddenly heard the garage door opening. This didn't make any sense because their children were too small to push the garage button, and from the outside, you need to put in a passcode on the keypad to open the door. They were afraid someone was trying to break into the house, so they called 911 to report what happened. When the police arrived, nothing appeared to be stolen or touched, and it was just chalked up to a technical glitch, and possibly someone with the same garage code activating their opener by mistake. The second incident occurred 3 weeks later on November 10th. Most mornings, Andrea would drive Sophia to kindergarten on her way to work, and Rusty was responsible for taking Ian to preschool a little later. At around 8:30 a.m., he was buckling Ian into his car seat when he thought he smelled gas. As Rusty walked to the side of the house to check the gas meter, he spotted a man lying face down near the air conditioning unit. At first, it looked like the man was just sleeping, and when he stood up, Rusty asked, "Are you okay?" And, "Are you supposed to be here?" The man stood there creepily and didn't answer, so Rusty ran to the car in the garage, backed out into the street, and called 911. The stranger took off across the lawn into the woods behind their home, holding something tucked into the back of his pants. Although Rusty couldn't see what it was, he was worried that it might be a gun. He became even more worried when he realized the man seemed familiar with the layout of their property. Instead of running toward the other side of the house, which dropped into a deep gully, he headed for a hidden pathway that only neighbors would know about.
I think he has a gun in his back pocket, and now he's running away. I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house. He was wearing a hat and earmuffs, black mustache.
After talking to 911, Rusty took Ian to daycare and returned to speak with the police and firefighters who arrived to investigate the gas leak. It turned out the gas had actually been released, although a gas company employee said that the leak was likely due to the old meter deteriorating and a manufacturer flaw, not tampering. The employee also said that it was possible the strange man was looking for copper wire in their AC unit. Andrea later suggested that the person could have been a worker doing construction on the home behind theirs, and police said they'd stay on top of any leads. Another thing to note was that Rusty stated the man was wearing a hat and earmuffs and had a black mustache. In October in Georgia, it may be getting a little chilly, but definitely not earmuff weather. And the two incidents were really starting to rattle Rusty. However, they were nothing compared to what was going to take place just over a week later. On November 18th, 2010, 8 days after the yard lurker incident, Rusty was again getting his morning started like any other day. Sophia and Andrea left early that morning, and at around 8:30, Rusty was loading Ian into the car to take him to Dunwoody Prep, located on Chamblee-Dunwoody Road. Just before 9 a.m., Rusty parked their silver Infiniti G35 in front of the school and walked Ian inside to his classroom. He headed back to the parking lot and was going to get ready for a business meeting at 11 with a prospective investor for Star Voicemail. However, that meeting unfortunately would never take place. Unbeknownst to Rusty, someone had followed him to the preschool and was waiting in a silver van outside for him to emerge. As Rusty opened his car door, a bearded man wearing a hoodie approached him, put a gun to his head, and shot 4 times. People in the parking lot looked around, asking each other about the noise because gunshots were the last thing anyone outside of Dunwoody Prep expected to hear. Onlookers saw a man casually walking back toward the van, but he struggled to get it in reverse, almost like he wasn't accustomed to driving the vehicle. The van jerked away and screeched out of the parking lot, sped straight down the street, made a U-turn, and then continued on Mount Vernon Road into the rush hour traffic. A couple watching from across the street saw Rusty lying lifeless on the ground next to his car. They raced over and found him bleeding, clinging to life with shell casings next to him in the blood. The woman dialed 911 while other onlookers came to Rusty's side to begin administering CPR. One member of staff saw that the victim was Ian's dad, Rusty Sneiderman, and went to find Andrea's number so that she could notify her of what was happening. The woman told Andrea that something happened at the school but that Ian was okay, so she didn't get in an accident on the way there. Andrea reportedly started screaming and demanding more information, asking if something happened to Rusty, but the worker just said she'd tell her more when she got there. As Andrea sped toward the school, she called her family, who said they'd meet her there. Another staff member dialed 911 as well, and within 10 minutes, police and paramedics pushed through the crowd surrounding Rusty. When Andrea arrived at the school, she ran toward Rusty's car, screaming what happened. But by that point, the ambulance had already taken him to the hospital. It wasn't until Andrea and her family arrived at the emergency room that they found out what happened, that Rusty had been shot, and he hadn't survived his injuries. He sustained several gunshot wounds to his neck close to the carotid artery and his chest. The first bullet entered through the left side of his jaw, traveled through his jawbone, and struck his right shoulder, finally lodging just beneath the skin in his back. The shooting occurred at point-blank range, leaving Rusty with stippling burns on his face from the gunpowder that discharged with the bullet. The second bullet was fired from a distance, likely while he was lying on the asphalt. It entered the right side of his abdomen, just below the rib cage, and damaged his liver, diaphragm, and right lung, ultimately embedding itself beneath the skin of his back and causing significant internal bleeding. Additionally, 2 more bullets struck his abdomen, tearing through his intestines before exiting his back, leading to further internal bleeding. Rusty also suffered a graze wound on his forearm, likely from a 5th shot or possibly from one of the other bullets striking just below his elbow as he attempted to shield himself from the gunfire. When investigators first started trying to figure out what took place, their original thought was that a professional hit had been carried out because the getaway vehicle had already taken their license plate off. The man appeared to be wearing a fake beard as a disguise. When Rusty's family came down from Ohio, they made a public plea asking anyone to come forward with potential information, because all any of the witnesses had was a description of the unmarked silver van.
The victim was shot multiple times, what appears to be point-blank range. We do have several witnesses that actually saw the shooting, and from those witnesses we were able to get a composite or a sketch of what the suspect may look like. The vehicle appears to, according to the one particular witness who has some knowledge about automobiles, that the vehicle was a Dodge Caravan, a newer model silver Dodge Caravan.
A warrant was quickly issued to search Rusty and Andrea's home, and detectives sat down with family members to get to know everything they could about their lives. Andrea described the strange things that had been happening in the weeks leading up to the shooting, like the garage door incident and the man laying in their yard. She believed that the person could have something to do with Rusty's death. At first, investigators believed the killer was likely someone Rusty had business dealings with, but Andrea was adamant that he didn't deal with any shady people, and they needed to be looking into this potential stalker. However, a new angle opened up when detectives asked Andrea if there were any men who had shown interest in her, and she surprisingly said yes. The boss, who had hired her at GE, Hemy Neuman. She explained that she told him she wasn't interested, but now the detectives had someone they could look into. After seizing the family's computers and important documents, detectives also uncovered that Rusty had a life insurance policy for around $2 million. After someone suddenly dies like this, the spouse and life insurance are always taken into account. However, for around 2 months, detectives didn't relay any information about their investigation to Andrea, and she began to feel like they didn't have any leads. She reportedly told a friend that in her opinion, her boss Hemy may have had something to do with it, because in actuality, his interest in her was a little more serious than she originally let on. A month after Rusty's death, Andrea and her family took a trip to Florida to celebrate what would have been their 10-year wedding anniversary. And when she got back, she decided to speak with detectives more about Hemy Neuman. What she didn't know was that they had already been looking into Hemy and had actually found a link between him and the getaway van at the preschool. Even though the minivan didn't have a license plate, investigators were able to enhance security camera footage and see that there was an Enterprise rental agency sticker. From there, they went to the closest Enterprise and retrieved records of who had recently rented out a silver van. They found that Hemy, one of the first people Andrea named as a potential suspect, had rented it out on the day of Rusty's murder. On January 4th, 2011, detectives brought Hemy in for questioning, but of course he denied being at the preschool or ever owning a gun.
I did not pull the trigger.
However, they had also done their homework about Hemy and Andrea going on work trips together. and they believed he was in love with her and killed Rusty as a result. They also seized his phone records and found that Hemy had recently been in contact with a man named Jan De Silva, who had confessed to investigators that he had sold Hemy a .40 caliber handgun just 1 month before the murder. De Silva also told police that Hemy contacted him again, saying he needed to get rid of the gun and to never get a mistress. Investigators believe that Andrea was in fact Hemy's mistress, but she was adamant that any affair was all in his head, and she had apparently told him many times that she wasn't interested. I mentioned before that Hemy's wife, Ariella, was the one who encouraged Andrea to apply for the job at GE. However, she told police that after Andrea started working there, she believed Hemy had started an affair. He started acting suspicious, hiding his phone, and going on business trips more often than usual. Hemy awaited his trial at the DeKalb County Jail, and Ariella subsequently filed for divorce. Initially, it was thought that Andrea was unaware of Hemy's actions, but that perception changed when authorities searched Hemy's phone and discovered inappropriate communications between them. Over 1,400 phone calls between Andrea and Hemy were uncovered over the course of the 6 months leading up to Rusty's death, as well as emails of Hemy asking Andrea to marry him. His trial was set to begin on October 17, 2011, and he initially pleaded not guilty to the charges. However, on September 16, 2011, just a month before the trial, he shifted his plea to not guilty by reason of insanity, admitting he killed Rusty but was unaware of his actions at the time.
Hemy has cooperated. He has met with, he has answered every question that could be asked of him from 3 forensic, psychological, psychiatric experts. And he's told each one of them. And he has admitted that he planned this for several months. He has admitted that he purchased this gun. He has admitted that he hid it by wearing a disguise. He has admitted that after doing this, he hid the disguise. He threw the gun away. He has admitted that he was not truthful when he was questioned by the police, that he hid it from them. But of course, these 3 doctors, in receiving that information, still ask why? Because none of that makes any sense. These 3 doctors have conducted what's called a forensic evaluation. That just means they're specialists in doing an evaluation under the law and explaining to you what it means. Their job is to ask whether or not Hemy, no one else, not you, not me, but whether or not Hemy believed that he was right or he was wrong in what he did in this case.
This plea meant that prosecution wouldn't need to prove that Hemy committed the murder, just that he was sane while doing so.
During the summer of 2010, the defendant claims that he was visited by a 6-foot dark demon that looked or sounded like Barry White. That the demon told him to come to him. That he anticipated or believed that meant for him to kill himself. Thought about it, he tried it, but ultimately he didn't do it because he knew it was wrong. Also in the summer, he claims a 6-foot bright white angel came to him. Looks like, sounded like Olivia Newton-John. And the angel told him, he says, that Andrea's children are his children. Even though he had a vasectomy years before the birth of either one of them. He's laying outside by the air conditioner, waiting for an opportunity to kill Rusty. As Rusty walks to his car, the defendant approaches him. Walking toward him, pulls his gun, and he shoots him 3 times. Here, here, and here. And then the man who didn't know right from wrong offered Jan Da Silva money to lie to the police about him buying that gun. Jan said, okay, I'll do it, but Jan didn't take his money. Jan didn't lie to the police. Now, they are the defendant's doctors in this case, that made an evaluation, and they claim, almost a year after the event, that the defendant did not know the difference between right and wrong at the time of the murder, and that he's not responsible for the murder. They finished their evaluation in the end of September. But in the middle of September, they filed their defense. Not guilty by reason of insanity. You'll hear from both of those doctors.
On October 28th, Hemy confessed to being the man face down in the Sneidermans' yard and revealed that he intended to kill Rusty that day, but ultimately decided against it because his son was present. During the trial, a forensic psychiatrist testified that Hemy exhibited characteristics of bipolar disorder with psychosis. Hemy also told investigators that he and Andrea were having an affair and claimed he was instructed to kill Rusty by both an angel and a demon. He described the demon as resembling Barry White, and the angel as having the voice of Olivia Newton-John. According to him, both entities warned that Andrea's children were in danger, and he felt compelled to protect them by killing Rusty.
I mean, why? Because they're my children, I couldn't let them be hurt. I couldn't let what happened.
Another psychiatrist for the defense argued that Hemy was obsessed with Andrea and unable to distinguish right from wrong. In contrast, a prosecution psychiatrist testified it was highly unlikely Hemy was experiencing manic episodes with psychosis without anyone noticing, since witnesses claimed he had never shown signs of hallucinations. This psychiatrist noted that during her evaluation, Hemy had mentioned his plan to kill Rusty, but pointed out that individuals experiencing manic behavior typically act impulsively.
His testing showed some disordered thinking, some disorganized thinking. It also showed some paranoia. It also showed that he was somewhat odd and had some weird magical thinking.
In his story, at one point he's saying he thought that they were having sex, and then he thought, well, maybe they didn't. There was something going on and somebody needed to check it out.
He was having more than an affair with Andrea Sneiderman. He believed that he was the father of her children, and that his children were in danger. That's where this rescue delusion comes in. And that he was going to protect them by killing Mr. Sneiderman.
There's this back and forth, come, go, I want you, I don't want you. Instead of that being a turnoff for him, I think it draws him in even more, and he forms this twisted attachment to her.
When asked if Hemy had ever mentioned having hallucinations before November 18th, 2010, the psychiatrist replied no, stating he appeared to be a stable individual, never showing signs of confusion or extreme mood swings. Andrea's testimony became a focal point of the trial and was controversial due to her behavior and attitude while on the stand.
When you went to the Atlanta Medical Center, ma'am, did you find out what had happened to Rusty?
They took me into what I call the death room.
Okay, so they told you...
I sat in a chair, and someone, I have no idea who they are, came over and said that he came in with multiple gunshot wounds and that he was dead. I don't remember anything they said after that.
Okay, so you found...
I fell to the floor.
You found out at the hospital that Rusty had been shot?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you say the death room. At that point, did they tell you or indicate to you Rusty was in fact dead?
Yep.
Okay, is that the first time you found out he was dead?
Yep.
Initially expected to be the prosecution's star witness, her lawyers advised her against testifying on Hemy's behalf. At first, it was believed that Hemy acted alone in Rusty's murder and kept it hidden from Andrea, fearing she would leave him if she knew the truth. However, once Andrea took the stand, both the prosecution and defense realized she might know more than she had previously admitted.
On October 31st of 2010, did the defendant text you while he was at the gun show with Dalton and tell you he was there?
No. Tell me that he was at a gun show?
Yes, ma'am.
I do not remember him texting me that.
Now, is this like the other emails that it could happen, you just don't remember?
No, I'm pretty sure I'd know gun show, but
You didn't remember I love you. Did you remember a gun show?
I didn't say that I didn't remember. I didn't remember all these emails from 2 years ago. Similarly, I don't think I could remember the content of texts from 2 years ago either.
While denying her affair with Hemy, she acknowledged that they had developed a close friendship and often discussed their personal lives. She said, "In the beginning, he talked about being happy with his children, sharing some financial issues, but he later expressed unhappiness in his marriage, describing his wife as confrontational." Andrea explained that their friendship deepened during work trips, although she maintained that it never turned romantic or sexual.
He reached out his hand and, as the defense has said, twirled me around, and that's it.
Was there other contact?
There was not.
None.
Besides dancing, like partner dancing?
Yeah.
Nope.
Did you kiss him or did he kiss you?
Nope. Nope. But I guess you have people that have said that that did occur.
Do you have any idea why someone would believe you were kissing?
No, I don't.
Okay.
In this case, when you're talking about alleged affairs and someone else's husband being murdered, I think people tend to think they saw a lot of things.
She said that whenever Hemy expressed feelings for her, she did not reciprocate. She said, "He once read me a poem outside a restaurant in Minden, Nevada, which hinted at deeper feelings, but I made it clear where I stood." She also admitted that she never told Rusty about Hemy's advances, fearing he would insist she quit her job, which was their primary source of income. Additionally, she refrained from reporting Hemy to their company because she was worried that he would be protected and she would get fired. Doubts about Andrea's involvement grew when scandalous emails were presented in court. Rather than appearing friendly, they had a romantic tone mentioning gifts of flowers and chocolates. It also seemed like Andrea was becoming conflicted with their relationship and possibly regretted things they had done on their work trips together. In one email, Hemy wrote, "I know it doesn't help, but I'm sorry. You are so beautiful and such a great person." In her reply, Andrea conveyed her anger and hurt, saying that this apology didn't erase the pain she felt for apparently betraying her marriage. She mentioned feeling like they might have ruined a meaningful friendship and also acknowledged that she betrayed others who loved her. Andrea insisted that the emails were merely reactions to them holding hands on a work trip and maintained that nothing else occurred between them. A significant part of her testimony focused on refuting claims that their work trips were opportunities for intimacy.
When I travel for business, I try to, outside the country, certainly I try to take advantage of those locations.
Take advantage of those locations, even with the man you know loves you and is romantically interested in you.
Yeah, well, he told me he was fine with it, so what was I supposed to do?
What were you supposed to do? Well, you said yesterday you shied away from him.
Sure.
Planning to go to a club, planning to go to the theater, going to a castle, is that your definition of shying away from him?
Well, we all have different definitions. Like I said, going to London without seeing a show seems like a shame to me.
Is that your definition of shying away from him?
It is.
One trip to Longmont, Colorado drew particular scrutiny. When asked if Hemy had shown up on GE trips when he wasn't there for business, she confirmed that he had appeared in Longmont, but clarified that she initially thought he was there for work. However, during a prior interview with investigators in January, Andrea stated that Hemy wasn't even on that trip. She also claimed not to remember discussing the Longmont trip with police, despite video evidence proving otherwise. Further doubt was cast when another email revealed that Hemy was not in Colorado for work, and it seemed Andrea was aware of that. In the email, she mentioned plans to take a taxi home since Hemy wasn't on business travel. When questioned about Hemy's presence in Longmont, she acknowledged that he might have been there to see her, but maintained that she wasn't aware of his true intentions at the time. Throughout the trial, Andrea often cited her inability to recall specific details due to the time that had passed since she worked with Hemy at GE. Additionally, an employee from a local bar near one of their work trips testified that she witnessed the two of them dancing, kissing, and behaving like a couple, further refuting Andrea's claims. A witness testified that she observed Hemy and Andrea dancing on a nearly empty dance floor, with Hemy spinning Andrea around to salsa music. She noted that they appeared very intimate, with Hemy holding Andrea closely and his hands on her rear end. The witness confirmed that she saw them kiss about 3 times during their encounter.
The DJ was playing Spanish music. Mr. Neuman then took Andrea by the hand and started kind of twirling her around.
When you say twirling around, how do you mean?
Twirling her around, he'd grabbed her by her hand and spun her around.
And so she would spin like so?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And then at one point, Andrea, I guess, didn't have his hand and she kind of pulled back and was dancing for him.
When you say dancing for him.
Dancing, she was standing in front of him and kind of, shaking her stuff and dancing for him. She was flirting. You could tell that, they were flirting and
Shaking her stuff, like
shaking her hips, she was dancing.
Okay, and how was he responding?
He was excited. He then mentioned that she was a trained dancer and that this was great. And then Andrea was dancing a little bit more.
And then Andrea was dancing a little bit more. Was there ever a time that Andrea stopped dancing for him and started dancing with him?
Yes, they did embrace. He had her hands on her rear.
He had her hands on her rear?
He had his hands on her rear, excuse me.
Okay, and when you say rear, what do you mean?
Her backside.
Her buttocks?
Her buttocks, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
They were dancing. They pop kissed.
Okay, so let me stop you before we get to the kiss.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Neuman has his hands on Andrea's rear end.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what are they doing as he's standing there with his hands on her rear end?
Dancing.
Okay, dancing. Is anything touching other than his hands to her rear end?
They're kind of grinding on each other.
And when you say grinding on each other, what do you mean?
Their bodies were rubbing against each other.
Genital to genital?
Yeah. Yes, I guess so. Yes.
Okay, and how is Andrea responding during this time that they're grinding on one another?
They both seemed like they were welcoming their embrace, so they seemed fine.
Is she touching him, or is he just touching
They
her?
were both touching each other.
How was she touching him?
She had her arms around him. They were hugging each other, embracing, dancing close together.
You mentioned the kiss. Tell me about the kiss.
At one point, they pop kissed.
What does pop kiss mean?
Just to press their lips against one another.
Okay. Who kissed who?
At one point he kissed her, but there was another time where she had kissed him.
Okay.
Where, she was dancing and kind of that whole exchange between them flirting on the dance floor, she went up and kissed him.
Additionally, Hemy's realtor recounted a conversation in which he described an intimate moment with Andrea. Hemy reportedly said that they had kissed and fondled each other in a hotel while in business, before Andrea went to the bathroom. When asked what Andrea did in the bathroom, Hemy reportedly said she went to finish herself off.
I believe that was when he said they laid on the bed and cuddled and did just about everything but have intercourse. Did he use those words, or I said, no, those weren't his words. What words did he use? They kissed and they fondled each other, and then she got up and went into the bathroom. Is that what he said? I said, yes.
Next question.
Did he tell you what she actually did in the bathroom? Yes. He told me that she went into the bathroom to, quote, finish herself off.
Andrea's best friend named Shiana Citron also testified that Andrea seemed to enjoy the attention she was getting from Hemy. Shiana recalled a conversation before Rusty's murder in which Andrea denied having an affair with Hemy, saying that she wouldn't consider it because Hemy was married. Andrea expressed her love for Rusty, and Shiana could tell she felt guilty about the situation.
After that lunch, I walked out thinking, oh my God, Andrea has checked out of this marriage. She was speaking about Rusty. Her eyes were dark and cold. When she was speaking about her boss, who I did not know his name at that point, and she was speaking about her boss, her eyes were sparkling.
Shiana's testimony raised suspicions about Andrea's knowledge of the murder, especially since she had been alerted to the incident at Dunwoody Prep. Andrea claimed she didn't learn about Rusty's shooting until she arrived at the hospital.
Did they at any time tell you what had happened to Rusty?
Nope. I didn't know what happened to Rusty until I got to the emergency room.
Okay.
No one told me what happened to Rusty.
Who else did you call when you were on your way to the daycare?
I don't remember, but evidently I tried to call Hemy, probably to tell him I had left the office and that something had happened, which was a very normal thing for me to have done, was to tell my boss that I had left the office and something had happened to my husband.
However, during her testimony, it was revealed that she had made several phone calls on her way to the hospital, one of which was to Hemy. When asked about a call she received from Andrea, Shiana confirmed that Andrea had told her Rusty had been shot and mentioned that she was on her way to the hospital. This raised further questions about Andrea's credibility, as it suggested she knew about Rusty's condition before she was supposed to.
You sure she said he had been shot?
Yes.
And she was on her way to the hospital?
Yes. I will never forget that for the rest of my life.
And she said she didn't know at that time if he was dead or alive?
Yes.
One of her calls to Hemy was framed as a work-related conversation, but given the context of the relationship, it led to speculation that she might have been checking in on him regarding the murder. Throughout the trial, Andrea's testimony was critical as she aimed to convince the jury that Hemy acted independently and with intent, not as a result of insanity. She maintained that Hemy had been stalking her and acted without her knowledge, even suggesting that her rejection of Hemy triggered his actions against Rusty. However, the evidence presented was overwhelming that they had been in fact having an ongoing affair and were much more than just friends. After extensive deliberation, the jury was dismissed on March 12, 2012, and returned 3 days later with their verdict. Hemy was found guilty, but mentally ill of malice murder, and guilty of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony.
Count 1, we the jury find the defendant as to count 1 guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but mentally ill. Count 2, we the jury find the defendant as to count 2 guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 5 years for the firearm charge to be served consecutively. Even though Hemy was now behind bars, the prosecutors believe that Andrea may have orchestrated Rusty's murder and possibly committed perjury during her testimony. In July of 2013, Andrea was facing multiple charges, including 1 count each of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault, along with 7 counts of perjury, 4 counts of making false statements, 1 count of concealing material facts, and 1 count of hindering the apprehension of a criminal. However, prosecutors ultimately decided they lacked sufficient evidence to secure convictions for the murder and assault charges. On July 26th, a judge agreed to dismiss those 3 charges, but prosecutors still believed they had enough evidence to pursue the perjury and false statement charges against Andrea. Andrea pleaded not guilty and awaited her trial while under house arrest. Despite her efforts to prove her innocence, the jury found her guilty on 9 out of the 13 counts. The verdict included guilty findings for hindering the apprehension of a criminal, concealing material facts, and making false statements during Hemy's trial.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Andrea Sneiderman, count 1, hindering the apprehension of a criminal, guilty. Count 2, concealment of material facts, guilty. Count 3, false statement, guilty. Count 4, perjury, not guilty. Count 5, false statement, not guilty. Count 6, perjury, guilty. Count 7, perjury, not guilty. Count 8, false statement, guilty. Count 9, perjury, guilty. Count 10, false statement, guilty. Count 11, perjury, guilty. Count 12, perjury, guilty. And count 13, perjury, not guilty.
Among those addressing the court was Steve Sneiderman, Rusty's brother, who delivered a victim impact statement.
About the impact of the crimes committed around the death of my brother, Rusty Sneiderman. The last time I stood before you was to address the acts of the evil man who pulled the trigger that took my brother's life in such a brutal fashion. Now I find myself in the very unusual position of returning now to speak about the betrayals of another person and the devastation and havoc she has intentionally inflicted on our lives. First and most importantly, I want to remind you about the one person that some of the parties in this case seem to have forgotten about, my brother, Rusty Sneiderman. It is painful to realize that for most, he is just another victim, someone that they heard about some time ago. That guy who got shot at the daycare. His life, however, was so much more than that. He was special. Rusty was a caring, thoughtful person who always put his own needs second and looked for a way to make your life better, whether through charitable work, professional networking, or just being there to give you a hand with something that needed to be done. He wanted things to be better for you, to help lift you up. How cruel that those he tried to help betrayed him so greatly. Rusty was smart and hardworking, relentless. He achieved success at every level of his life. Sometimes it was through intellect, but when it wasn't enough, he would simply keep working until he got it done. There was always time for one more call, one more email, one more internet search. How cruel that he had the misfortune to come across these sinister characters who found the only way to stop him. Rusty was a good family man. He pushed himself to provide for his wife and his family, and he succeeded, achieving more by age 36 than most achieve in a lifetime. It wasn't about the stuff, though, Your Honor. It was about building the best possible life for his family. How cruel that such good fortune wasn't enough for some people. Rusty was a wonderful, devoted father. Sophia and Ian were always at the forefront of his thoughts. His smile, that radiant smile, was never bigger or brighter than it was playing with his kids or teaching them about something they saw. He had an ability to discipline them good-naturedly, lovingly rousing a child who wasn't listening by simply calling, "Hey, Fred," which always brought them back to task with a smile. It must be in the delivery, since it's never worked for me. He has had so much love and wisdom that he was committed to give to his kids. How cruel that someone who should have known better than anyone else took this path instead. I could go on and on. He was irreplaceable, and the void he leaves is vast. Make no mistake, Rusty Sneiderman was a special, special person, Your Honor, and that's something that we must not lose sight of as we conclude this process. Let's compare Rusty to the defendant. She thinks she is special, but she is not. She's a common criminal, lawfully convicted in this court of 9 separate felonies. What have we learned about her? She lied, just like we always knew it, just like everyone knew it. She lied to her family. She lied to her friends. She lied to Rusty. Then Rusty was brutally taken from us, and she lied some more. She lied to her family. She lied to her friends. She lied to us. She lied to the police as they were investigating his murder. Then they arrested her boss and lover, and she lied some more. She lied to her family and her friends. She lied to us. She lied to the police as they were building a case to convict the shooter. She lied to the prosecutors who would seek justice for Rusty. Then they tried her boss and her lover, and she lied some more. She sat in this very chair, Your Honor, and she lied to her family and her friends. She lied to us. She lied to the jury that would decide the shooter's fate. She lied to you, Your Honor. Time and again, it was more important for this criminal to protect herself and her lover rather than find and convict her husband's killer. We knew it then, and we know it to a legal certainty now. These were not little lies. These were covering her role in the death of Rusty Sneiderman, her husband, the father of her children. Her pathetic narcissism would be almost comical if it weren't tied to the death of such a special person. Most criminal conduct impacts numerous people, and this particular criminal is certainly no different. Her repeated and willful disregard of the truth for so long has left a wide swath of destruction in its path. It has devastated multiple families. Obviously, Rusty paid the ultimate price for her conduct. Without her lies and betrayals prior to his death, Rusty would still be with us and his children. For that conduct, she will have to answer to a higher authority someday. But here in your court, Your Honor, we urge you to keep the results of her conduct that led her to lie in the forefront of your deliberations. A very special man is gone because of her actions, and all she can do is lie about it again and again. Self-preservation is the only thing on her mind. Look at my parents, Your Honor. I know you know who they are. You've seen them here every day. Every day in the trial of the shooter, and every day of this trial as well. While they carry themselves with the uncommon composure and dignity that comes from a place of strength I cannot comprehend, make no mistake, they have been tortured by this common criminal for nearly 3 years. They were forced to bury their son, a burden no parent should ever have to face, and then forced to relive the trauma over and over again, day after day, as a direct result of the repeated and willful lies of this common criminal. Before we can have final sentence from this court, Your Honor, we will be forced to watch a parade of this criminal's pathetic enablers come forward again and demand special treatment for her. They will be up here shortly to do what they have been told to do by this convicted felon. Consistent with her past conduct, this criminal, this master manipulator, will use anyone to say anything to let her slither away from responsibility.
Ultimately, Andrea was sentenced to 5 years in prison but received credit for time served while under house arrest, resulting in a significantly shorter sentence than the 20 years sought by the prosecution.
As to count 1, I will sentence you to 5 years. As to count 2, 5 years. As to count 3, 5 years. As to count 6, 5 years. As to count 8, 5 years. Counts 9, 11, and 12, which is the perjury counts, you were found guilty on those counts, but those counts were merged as into count 6. Count 10, I'll also sentence you to 5 years. I will give you credit for the time you have been in custody and also the time in which you served under house arrest. Mr. Morgan, you had given, Mr. Clay, you had given me that date before. How much time did she spend under house arrest?
She was on she was in custody, she was arrested on August the 2nd. She was on house arrest until the actual day we began the trial, which would have been July 29th. So she was either in custody or on house arrest from August 2nd of 2012 until July 29th of this year.
All right. I will give her credit for that, Dana, for that time, and this will be 5 years to serve on each of these counts. I will run them concurrently. I'm not going to run them consecutively. I will run them concurrently. I will run them at the same time. It will be 5 years to serve in custody.
However, this was still not the end of the story. In March of 2014, it was announced that Hemy was seeking a new trial, claiming that Andrea's perjury had influenced the outcome of his original trial. In 2015, the Georgia Supreme Court overturned Hemy's conviction and granted him a retrial. He was subsequently found guilty again in 2016 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As for Andrea, she only served 22 months at the Arundel State Prison before being released on parole. Today, she is a free woman, which many people, including Rusty's family, believe is a miscarriage of justice.
I thought they got her at her worst, but I've seen that temper before.
Don and Marilyn Sneiderman watched their daughter-in-law with anger and a little bit of surprise.
She was combative, belligerent. I would have thought she would have been more cooperative, trying to convict the guy who supposedly killed her husband. And she didn't do that. She was defensive all the time.
It becomes a case about what else is being lied about, what else is being hidden, what else is being misdirected.
From being a heartbroken widow to facing serious charges for her actions, Andrea's life has kept people talking and debating. While she ended up serving much less time than many thought she would, her release has stirred up a lot of mixed feelings about what really happened and whether she was held accountable. As Andrea tries to move on, the past still haunts her, leaving everyone wondering just how involved she really was in the events that changed so many lives. She even went on to change her and her children's last name to Russell, which, if you remember, is Rusty's legal first name. Andrea's story isn't just about crime and punishment. It also forces us to confront the messy realities of relationships and the choices some people make when they want out of their marriage. At the end of the day, Andrea's choices played a part in her children growing up without their father, and that's something she will have to live with for the rest of her life. I'm really interested to know what you think about the case. Do you think Hemy acted alone, or did he carry out Rusty's murder at Andrea's request? Let me know down in the comments, and until next time, stay safe.